All right, we're back. Hockey podcast extraordinaire time. We have a lot to talk about today. It is time for Wooden Sticks. You found us here on the Talk North podcast network. Always fun to get the schedule ready for the next season, and we had that release from all NHL teams this week, so that kind of pumped everybody up. All kinds of off-season talkers, which we'll handle here in the first segment, and then in the middle portion, we are going to connect with a young lady that's done Minnesota real proud. Won a couple of state championships at Hill Murray, went on to play Division I college hockey for the Huskies at St. Cloud State, and she just finished up her first full season covering the New Jersey Devils. Her name is Rachel Herzog. She is spectacular. Really have enjoyed getting to know her. Our connection goes way back to when she was playing back on a hockey day years ago. It was fun to connect with her and Katie Storm before a Wild game in March last season. She's a rising star, and I really think you're going to enjoy our conversation today as we tackle her hockey background, her broadcasting career, and all that good stuff as she lives out in that big area known as New Jersey / New York, and we'll see what kind of trouble she's getting into out there. But early impressions here as we all digest the schedule for next year. I think on the front end, we knew with the World Juniors coming to Minnesota, which is awesome, that the Wild were going to have a really long road trip right after the Christmas break. That road trip will begin December the 27th, and that's that rare day, the only time during the regular season where the team actually travels the day of the game. With the collective bargaining agreement, there is no hockey activities on the 24th, 25th, and 26th, something that Dallas found out the hard way last year when it leaked that they cheated, and their head coach got himself in a little trouble. Anyway, you travel on the day of the game if you play on the 27th. So we'll wake up and head to Winnipeg a couple days after Christmas. I'm sure that'll be balmy. And the good news with the trip to Winnipeg is we get in and we get right out. And then the Wild head to a little warmer area known as Las Vegas, a little playoff rematch against the Golden Knights. They spend New Year's Eve playing the Sharks with a rare matinee in San Jose. And this will be year 20 for me covering the Wild. I have yet to see in my memory an afternoon game in San Jose, but that'll be really cool. Then we go to Anaheim. And then speaking of rare, a part of this 7-game, 13-day trip are back-to-back games in LA against the Kings, which you almost never see that. And then we'll close out by going to Seattle before the Wild head back home. So that trip certainly going to be a big part of their season and their journey, and they're going to have some success on that long trip. They also start out with another road-heavy schedule. I don't know what it is about Gary Bettman and the National Hockey League, but they love to throw the Wild on the road in the month of October. Remember, last year, they played nearly the entire month on the road. This year, 6 of their first 8 games are on the road, and adding to that is who they're playing on the road. St. Louis, Dallas, Washington, Philly, the Rangers, and the Devils. So all but one was in the playoffs last year. So that certainly will set the tone for the season. The good news is they do have a really home-friendly schedule in November. 7 of their first 9 games in the month of November are at home. They're going to be home during the week of Christmas, which I think is great for fans and for all of us that cover the team. But with the Olympic break in February, where there are no games for almost 3 weeks consecutively, February 5th through the February 25th spot, that means that March and April are going to be jammed full of games. And for Minnesota, 14 games in 28 days in March. And then I think when they get to April, they play 8 games in like 13 days. So you hope that they stay healthy and they can have some depth to withstand that last month and a half on the grind during the tough part of the season where you're probably physically and mentally a little bit tired. So overall, I thought it's a hard schedule. I knew the long road trip was going to be a part of it, but there are some really fun dates, including the home opener against Dean Evison and the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Wild have had a lot of success recently against Columbus, so you'd like to see them get off to a good start. They open up the season 2 days prior on October 9th with a trip to St. Louis to take on the Blues. I think they also will be a part of Dallas's first home game. So, yeah, some challenging games for sure. And I think the biggest talkers, and I think each position, as we talk throughout the summer on Wooden Sticks, has some meat on the bone. From the goaltending perspective, I think Bill Guerin has kind of shown his hand it sure feels like Jesper Wallsted's going to be given the opportunity here, not only into training camp at the start of the season, to be the 1A if Gus Buzz is that, of course, number one goaltender off his 58 games played last year. Wallsted's kind of had up and down go of it, but he's been in Iowa where they've had to deal with a lot of players getting called up to fill the void of the injuries. The Wild have certainly tried to withstand these last two seasons. So Wallsted's got all the talent in the world. I think it'll really benefit him to know coming into camp that he's got a spot to work to getting as many starts as he can, and then playing off Philip Gustafsson to start the year. I think will do him some really positive things mentally. It'll give him a chance to really settle in, which I don't think he had the last couple of years. On the blue line, the question marks include the Brodin surgery / injury. How much time will he miss on the front end of the season? He's such a big part of the back end for Minnesota. I think keep an eye on that. When we get to training camp, we'll get some more specifics on how that recovery is going. I would anticipate he misses at least part of October, hopefully not too much of that first month with the challenge that the Wild have with some of those games. And then the two young guys, Jiricek, getting him back and going, and Zeev Boyum trying to put on that 10 to 15 pounds of muscle here in the offseason. Both Jiricek and Boyum have a chance to really impact Minnesota. They've got a real need in power play, yes, but in 5-on-5 situations, the Wild are always a team that are driven by their defense getting involved in the offense. And I think their progress, specifically those two players, Jiricek and Zeev, if they can take big steps forward and make a real impact on the offensive side, I think that's going to bode really well for this hockey team. We know what Brock Faber brings. We know what Jared Spurgeon brings. And we've seen Jake Middleton develop his offensive side of the game. And certainly Brodin, we think, will be back sometime in that first month. So those two young guys can certainly be something we're pointing to during training camp in the preseason when we get started in September. And no update yet on Rossi or Kirill and their contracts. I'm far more worried about Marco Rossi. I think the Kirill thing will get taken care of. I think his agent is waiting to see what McDavid gets when that extension is announced. The Rossi divide is legit. But again, this is not abnormal. There are going to be contract disputes in every organization through the course of time. It happens. At some point, they're going to, I think, find a common ground, or they're going to find a fair trade to help fill that void if they have to go that direction. I don't think they want to. But certainly training camp talkers include Tarasenko and where he'll end up in the lineup. Will he be with Kirill? Will he be somewhere else? What kind of player is Yurov? With Yurov coming over at age 21, what type of impact can he make? I think training camp preseason will give us a little peek. And then once the season gets going, we'll see how comfortable he gets. He certainly has some incredible skills. He's very, raw with those skills. And I think, it might take him a little time to get up to speed, so to speak, producing at the NHL level. And then is it finally the time for Liam Ogren, a first-round draft pick that has the body, that has the shot, and has always had the upside to be a top six guy? Will he have the type of training camp and start to the season where he can earn some of that ice time? That's up to him, clearly. I think right now he'd likely be on the outside looking in terms of top six with their forward depth chart, but I really do see the potential for him to take a big step this year and make that type of impact. So we'll keep all these things on the forefront of our conversation here on the show, and certainly have some guests that revolve around some of these talkers as we get closer to training camp. Today, though, we're looking forward to that conversation with Rachel Herzog. Before we get to that, got to thank our great partners here on the show. We'll start with my dear friend, John Schweitz, and let's hear all about the Minnesota Masonic Charities that he's involved with. When people think about the Freemasons, they often think about the secret handshakes and those crazy hats. And of course, they always have those cool pancake breakfasts. But Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the U of M, or the Masonic Children's Hospital, and of course the Masonic Home over in Bloomington. Just a few examples, folks, of the important work that Freemasons support here in Minnesota. They're part of the largest fraternal organization in the world. Masons have consistently answered that call when it comes to charitable needs. I'm so happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities and John Schweitz have chosen our podcast as a place to help spread the word. I'm looking forward here in the coming weeks to months to continuing that great momentum. Thank you to the Minnesota Masonic Charities. I'm up north, as I mentioned here, recording this on a Thursday, but whenever you get up north, you always think about our friends with Onyx Maps and Onyx Fish.
Have you ever driven past a piece of land and wondered who owns that? Or maybe you need to know exactly where a property line runs. That's where Onyx Hunt comes in. And it's not just for hunters. There are folks using Onyx for their jobs every day throughout the country. From farmers and ranchers mapping out their fields, wildland firefighters navigating rough terrain, to construction workers needing to know who owns what property, this app offers something for everyone. If you need the best land ownership maps, aerial imagery, and property boundaries in your pocket, Onyx Hunt is the tool for the job. Try it free for 7 days. Download Onyx Hunt in the app or Google Play Store, or visit onyxmaps.com/hunt to get started.
And as the summer months fly by, always important to think about how you get to where you're going, especially with what lies ahead next hockey season. Why not go see our good friends at Lexus over in Wayzata and Maplewood? Welcome back to Wooden Sticks. As always, we are recording from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Happy to be joined by New Jersey Devils host, analyst, reporter extraordinaire, former St. Cloud State Husky and Hill Murray Pioneer, Miss Rachel Herzog. Rachel, thanks for doing this today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Kevin. Super excited.
You know, I look back at the game when you guys came to St. Paul, and it was Katie Storm, myself, and you taking a picture down by the locker rooms a couple hours before face-off. It's such a fun connection to have. And I know the players in the league all talk about it that grew up in Minnesota and are from here and reconnect when they're playing against each other. We're not broadcasting against each other, but It is fun to connect with Minnesotans. And for you, I'm sure it's been a heck of a journey. You just finished up your first full season, and that had to be a complete whirlwind.
It absolutely was. First of all, coming back to Minnesota in March was just such a full circle moment for me. I had a bunch of family and friends in the stands getting to reconnect with you. It had been a handful of years since we initially had met when I was playing in college. And then, of course, being friends with Katie throughout college and then into our professional careers as well. But yeah, this was a year that completely changed my life. Prior to this season, I was working up in Fargo, North Dakota as a weekend sports anchor and reporter. So saw the opportunity at hand, knowing that the Devils were looking for a new host, analyst, reporter, and just threw it to the wind and hoped that somebody saw something in me. And it just worked out in my favor. And I never once thought that I'd actually get the job. And each step of the way, I was just grateful for the experience. And it ended up being the best thing that's ever happened to me. And the crew that I work with is incredible because the jump was so drastic going from North Dakota to MSG Networks. They knew that I was in for a treat with how crazy the NHL schedule truly is, and just kind of jumping in with little experience in the National Hockey League. So I really had to lean on the guys that had done this time and time again, and I wouldn't have been able to get through this first season without them. They really helped me gain a lot of confidence and have fun amidst all the craziness and chaos, because we know live TV is just that. It's crazy and it's chaotic. But I really learned so much in that first season and had so much fun in the process as well.
Well, you've got a unique set of skills because you've always had the personality, you've had the knowledge, but you know, you played the game. And I think for a lot of people that end up broadcasting in the National Hockey League, and even the very best of the best, I think of Doc Emmerich as a prime example. You know, you played the game and you played at a high level, you know, I mean, going back to your days at Hill Murray. So I think that certainly gives you a leg up. But I have to ask you, going from North Dakota and that market to maybe the biggest market in the league, you know, New Jersey, New York, and you guys are kind of butt up right against each other. And it's enormous. It's intimidating even for me, just to think about it. How did you adjust early on when you first moved out there to the completely different cadence of life?
Yeah. So I found out they wanted to offer me the job, I believe, in the middle of August, and I had uprooted my life in 3.5 weeks, and came out here to New Jersey and then started right away. I think with how quickly everything was kind of falling into place, I think that almost helped me transition because I'm somebody that thrives in the chaos. And I'm also somebody that is somewhat of a perfectionist. So I can get really down on myself. I can be really hard on myself and my own worst critic. So the fact that I had to get out here in 3 weeks, and then 2 days later, after I got to my apartment, I was starting work. And then we had our preseason games, and then the season started in October. So I think not having any time to really dwell on mistakes that I made early on in the season, because it was just boom, 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 so many games back to back to back. I didn't have the time to sit and worry about, oh, I didn't do this right, or I shouldn't have said this. Kind of like the NFL, right? You got a game a week, say like
Yep.
every Sunday. So you have one game on Sunday, and then you could have all week to kind of think about, oh, I should have done this, or I made this big mistake, yada, yada, yada. Didn't have that this season. And so I kind of just had to put my nose down and keep looking forward and try to keep my head above water as much as I could. And because I am a perfectionist, I also had to just laugh at every mistake that I made. Whether it was forced or I actually thought it was funny, that was my way of keeping it lighthearted and moving on to the next thing. Because if I get down on myself in the middle of a game, it's not a good sight. So trying to keep myself light and make fun of the mistakes that I made rather than being hard on myself. I think that's truly what helped me internally move through this first year. If I did it any other way, I don't think I would have made it because, like you said, it is a transition that you can't even really imagine until you're in it. And you just got to do it.
Yeah, and it's live TV, and I think
Yeah.
the folks that are watching, I think understand that. Sometimes on social media, a small percentage maybe don't understand that, and I've done it for 19 years, and these last probably 12 to 13 years with social media and some of the fun that you can have interacting with folks there can get a little blown out of proportion. And I think what you have to remember too is, most people that are watching our broadcasts are probably not going to send a message, especially if they like something. They're just going to say, oh, that was really cool. I like what Rachel did. However, the small percentage that maybe didn't like it will probably make sure their voices are heard. And I think for me, that's an adjustment I had to make a long time ago. And my daughters actually have a harder time with some of that stuff than I do because I get it. And I listen, I think all of us that are in broadcasting want it to be perfect every night. We put a lot of time in behind the scenes. We're traveling, we're at morning skate, we're developing these relationships with the coaches and players. But the bottom line is in live TV, it's never going to be perfect. So I think the quicker as a broadcaster, you realize that mistakes are a part of the game. Nobody's perfect. It goes a lot easier. And watching you, you've done one hell of a job. You really have.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I definitely had to build some thicker skin. I mean, everybody that I've met, in person has been nothing but gracious. I've had really great interactions with everybody at the arena. It's just, the people that do take to social media, they're really quick to point out your mistakes and complain, and just try not to take that to heart too much and focus on the people that do come up to you live and in person, face to face, and appreciate what you do. Those speak volumes against the ones that just hide behind a screen. So yeah, it does take a toll, but I think as the years go on, it'll hurt less and less. If that makes sense.
It makes sense totally. And for me, I look at where you're living, and I mean this sincerely. Every time the schedule comes out, and we just got the schedule release here this week, the first thing I do is figure out when I get to go to New York City. And it's my very favorite place on the NHL schedule to go. I could never live in New York City, but I love my time there. And when we come to New Jersey, we stay right in Hoboken. So it's super easy to navigate from there into the big city. My question to you, Rachel, is, you're a young person. You've got a great gig, but you've got this enormous place right next to where you're living, where you can go to a Broadway show, a great restaurant, concerts, different games. How do you, work-life balance everything? Because that's got to be for a young lady just kind of getting going in this business. That's got to be an unbelievable advantage of being out there.
It is 100%. I think when I initially moved out here, I really didn't have much of that networking just because the season was overtaking my entire life. Right. So now that we've had so much downtime since the season's been over, just going into the city, utilizing that as much as possible. I even just go into our offices or our headquarters, which is right outside Penn Station, which is really convenient. And just go and say hi to people and see who's coming in and out of MSG. Because, we, of course, have the Islanders and the Rangers and the Knicks within our company as well. So just to utilize those relationships as much as I can. It also just gets me out of the house. I'm really trying to just make friends out here too, Kevin.
Right.
That is a hard thing to do when you're thousands of miles away from home and trying to navigate that space in the summer. So that's kind of been in the forefront these last couple of months as well. But yeah, it's really cool to be out here on the coast. I've been in the Midwest my whole life. It's such a change of pace. I like just going into New York and walking around and just taking in the way of life out here because it's so much different than Minnesota. You can appreciate both for what they are, but I really am liking where I'm at right now.
I bet you are. And, I'm with you. When I end up in New York on these road trips, I will spend part of one day on every trip just going down to Central Park and literally just walking around. I don't have an agenda. I don't know where I'm going. And I have 3 or 4 hours blocked off where I literally just go see the art that's displayed. There's musicians, the hustle and bustle. It's so different from where I've lived all my life. I've lived in Minnesota almost my entire life. And so I really appreciate that lifestyle. I don't know if I could do it living in that city. Like you're over in Jersey, and there are some really cool, beautiful spots where you can just kind of chill. If you're in New York City, there doesn't seem to be a lot of chill. It is nonstop. It looks like when I get there every time.
Yeah, no, I definitely pick and choose when I go into the city if I have the energy for it. Because I'm also a little bit more type B, where like my apartment right now is more in a suburb, right? And I see deer and squirrels and birds, and it reminds me of Minnesota. I don't think I would do well in the middle of a city like New York. So I like to visit. I like to go in once a week and do some shopping and people watch. But other than that, I applaud the people who can keep up with that lifestyle because it is very impressive.
So on Wooden Sticks, we like to go back to where it all started. So let's go back to when you were just a little kid. What drew you to the game of hockey as a player? Like, where did that all start?
Yeah, so my dad, of course, played college hockey and college baseball at Augsburg University in Minnesota. So he was already a big hockey fan. And then I'm a family of 4 girls. So my oldest sister started to play, and we watched Wild Games and watched the movie Miracle. We would go to Claire's games, and my dad would ask if I wanted to play. And when I was about 8, I think, 8 or 9, I started. So we were a little bit later to the game. If you ask most people that start skating in Minnesota, it's probably around 4 when they start even walking, So we started organized hockey a little bit later. And we had skated on a pond in our backyard. So I knew how to skate. I just hadn't played hockey yet. And went to tryouts. I was super fast, just didn't know how to stop. So I was the girl that was running into the end boards and having to get up and then skate the other way because I didn't know how to stop. So my coach eventually told me to run up and down my hallway in my house with socks on and shift my feet in the way that you would stop. And that's how I eventually learned how to stop on skates. And then it was all history after that. Hockey was something that kind of came naturally to me and something my dad and I really bonded over as I got older. And especially once I got to around seventh or eighth grade, my dad wanted me to consider going to Hill Murray, which was a more hockey dominant school, both for boys and girls. And at that time, I had just made new friends at my middle school. I was like, I don't want to switch schools and make new friends again. But he took me to a Hill Murray hockey game, and Hannah Brandt, for all you who are big Minnesota hockey fans, Hannah Brandt was a senior that year at Hill Murray, and she had scored 4 goals in one game. And she is the one that inspired me to take the leap of faith once again, go to a new school, and it ended up being another one of the best decisions I've ever made. She was an inspiration to me and helped me in that journey to pursue hockey further. That's how I ended up at Hill Murray and won 2 state championships there.
Amazing.
Got second place and third place as well. And then, yes, of course, ended up at St. Cloud State for college. So it was a really fun journey getting through high school and going through the college recruitment process. I was somebody that really delayed that. I didn't know where I wanted to go. And the people that committed as freshmen, I was like, you're crazy. We're 14. How do you know where you want to go to college? It was so bizarre. So I put it off until senior year. But very grateful for choosing St. Cloud and everything that school has brought me, even beyond hockey. It's pretty incredible how everything unfolds the way it does.
Well, and it's interesting too, because, we watched in the last year 2 Minnesota women go into the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, and I got really choked up watching, because for 10 years I was the women's college coach at St. Thomas, and I was out recruiting on a regular basis, and I got to know Natalie Darwitz when she was at Egan. I knew her dad really well, got to know Chrissy Wendell, and to see those 2 specifically go into the Hall of Fame and give that speech with their families up in Toronto, having those type of role models. And you mentioned Hannah Brandt, who is just salt of the earth, just an incredible human being. We know what a great hockey player she is. But for you as a young kid playing hockey in Minnesota, how much did it help to have some of that star power that by the time you got to Hill Murray, you saw a path where there were incredible female hockey players that had gone to the highest, Olympics, Division I, all this good stuff. What type of impact or ripple effect did that have on you as a young kid?
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course, it drove me to Hill Murray as well. But then I think it brought a lot of other girls into the school as well. I know there was other girls that were an inspiration to different players on my team, but I think those girls really set the tone for what's possible for us, right? And that's what we want to continue to showcase to the girls coming up and the younger generations as well. I hope that we see that into broadcasting too, having more women that have played the game kind of get involved in the TV aspect of things is really cool. And yeah, I think I just needed one person to look at and be like, wow, I want to be like her. And that was Hannah Brandt for me. And prior to that, hockey was just something that I did for fun. I never really aspired to, it wasn't ever my dream to go play Division I hockey or to go play at the best high school in the state. But it just took one person to change how I viewed the sport and the goals that I wanted to set for myself. And I think that's important for every girl to have in sports, in life, and for boys too. Sometimes it just takes one thing to change everything.
And in your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine when you were, just playing the game at the amateur level, specifically growing up before you got to Hill Murray, having a league like the PWHL? I am blown away, having worked some of those games on the broadcast side, at how this thing continues to grow. There's expansion now, the level of play, the interest, the crowds. Like for me, you mentioned women getting involved in broadcasting. They don't have to only be on the PWHL side. We know that. But to have a professional league for young girls to dream about, I think has to be just an enormous benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I never once thought that there would be something like the PWHL. Of course, there was the WNBA and there's other professional women's leagues, but it just it wasn't ever something that crossed my mind. I always was just like, oh yeah, girls go and play in Europe, right? And if they want to keep playing, they go play for a couple of years, and then they come back here and start their real life, right? Their job, their 9 to 5, whatever. It just wasn't ever something that I thought was so close to happening. I graduated or was done playing in 2020, and it was right around that time that the PWHL was really coming into fruition. They had the other professional leagues, and they finally combined to get to where we are right now. But to see so many girls that I grew up with, or that were a couple years younger than me or my age, playing in that league now and being so happy for them that they're living out their true dream. And seeing all the little girls at the Prudential Center, the New York Sirens played there this year. Right. So seeing the fan base come out and support them. And really, I think what gets me is the little girls have something to look up to now. We looked at NHL players and we're like, wow, it would be a dream come true to get paid to play hockey. And that was who we looked up to. And now it's, little girls that get to watch women do it. I think it continues to grow. It continues to expand the fan base, and they're reaching out to all different types of demographics, which is really, really, really important. And seeing, the expansion of it and the draw it's bringing and the excitement, I think it's so cool. And I only think it's going to continue to flourish as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Dawn Mitchell with a reminder. Please tune in to our podcast every week, Dawn of Sports. You can find it on Talk North Podcast Network.
I'm with you 100%. It's really exciting. And we'll just continue to grow the game of hockey, which, I think all boats end up rising. And I think it's going to be awesome on the broadcast side because there's more games, there's more teams. And as I said, I was lucky enough to do some of those games filling in. And they really are all kinds of fun with the crowds, and you get a different type of crowd there. Like, you and I work NHL games, and there are some places you go, and I'll use Toronto as an example, where there's a real corporate side to it, which is just, again, these teams are trying to make money. I get it. And it's the suites and now the fancy little lounges / restaurants by the locker room like Pittsburgh has. But you go to a PWHL game, and I'm blown away, not just the young girls that are there, but the young boys that are there. It is a super kid-friendly environment and family-friendly. It's a little more affordable. And, from a Minnesota Frost perspective, they're getting 8, 9, 10,000 fans a game. And I'd venture to guess at least a third of them are kids. And I think that's how you really grow the game of hockey.
Absolutely. I kind of compared it. It's when I worked in Fargo, we went to Fargo Force games, and seeing the amount of kids in those types of spaces, that the concourse had so many things pertain to children, and to keep them engaged, and the fun giveaways that they do. I know the New York Sirens did that every single game. I think it's really cool that they're really kind of drawing to that younger generation to keep them around and inspire them to go out and play too. So I get exactly what you're saying.
So let's go back to St. Cloud State, because I've worked for the network. I guess, we continue to change the name here, covering the Wild, but from a company perspective, back when it was Fox Sports, then Fox Sports North, and all the way through where we are now, it's always had a huge influence from St. Cloud State, because the Huskies have one of the best broadcasting training grounds in the country. It's well known. Like, the top producer of Fox Sports right now for baseball, for some of their nationally televised games, whether it's football, they're all with an influence of St. Cloud State. So how much did you know when you were at Hill Murray and you chose to go play for the Huskies? Did you know about the broadcast side of things, and maybe that was a direction you were going to plan on going, because clearly that school is one of the all-time best?
You know what? I never in a million years thought that I was going to be somebody that pursued a TV career.
No kidding.
It never once crossed my mind. My first 2 years of school, I was a biomed student wanting to be a doctor.
Wow.
So that's what I was doing. I was following in the footsteps of my older sister. She's currently in her second year of residency to be an anesthesiologist. So glad that she saw it through and it's going to work out for her. Learned in just a couple of years that maybe wasn't the path for me. And that's when I ran into you sophomore year. We chatted on Hockey Day Minnesota, and you were the first person to tell me about potentially pursuing a TV career. And then it was Katie Storm that doubled down later that year and kind of pushed me in that direction. And I just leaped right in. Again, never thought about being on TV. It never once crossed my mind. And I just dove right in. And that's when I found out that it was such a prestigious journalism school. I was like, what are the odds in central Minnesota?
Right.
The random major that I'm just deciding to pick up and hope it works out is one of the best in the country. It was so bizarre. And that's why I always say everything happens for a reason, because there was too many weird things that were aligning that just helped me get to where I am right now.
That's incredible. I had a similar conversation with Katie when she was a student at St. Cloud State. And, it's funny, in this business, and you'll do it for a long time, you've got the gift. And I love the way you go about doing your thing on TV with the Devils. And, the it factor is something I don't throw around lightly, but you've always had that sparkle. And I think in this business, I think people that end up here are meant to be here. And I started out going into teaching and coaching, and I did the coaching thing for a long time. I really didn't go full-time broadcasting till I was almost in my mid-30s. So I got a late start. But I know this is where I was supposed to be. And now you've had a full year in the league, and I think I know the answer to the question. But as you went through the chaos and the fun, like of traveling and being around an NHL team, it is a job where you look back and say, oh my God, this is pretty cool. Do you feel like you were meant to be here now, looking back?
Yes, 100%. I think back to when I was, wanting to be a doctor, and I was in just class 24/7 outside of the 3 hours I had blocked out for hockey practice in college. I was in class, in labs, or at the library studying. And that's not where I shine at all. I'm such a people person. I need to be collaborating and interacting with people. And of course, I love the game of hockey so much. So it just kind of worked out that all of the best things I see in myself all get to come together into my profession. And I'm really, really grateful that I got this particular opportunity early on in my career. Again, I thought I would need to take a couple more pit stops in my professional career before getting to this point out here in Jersey, but I am so incredibly grateful that they gave me a chance at this point to grow much quicker than maybe I thought. So
it's fantastic. It really is. So a lot of our listeners are based here in the Midwest, but clearly with social media, we're gonna pump this up, and hopefully some Devils fans, I'm certain, will find you. So tell us about last season, and what would Minnesota hockey fans need to know about the Devils last year, and then we'll get into kind of some of the fun stuff looking into this next year.
Yeah, are we talking hockey specific?
Yeah,
about
like
the Devils?
what are some of the memories you have about the team, their successes? I know, like the Wild, they had some big injuries. But looking back, what did you learn about the Devils last year?
Yeah, I mean, they're an incredibly fun team to watch. A lot of really young talent, of course, with the two Hughes brothers in Jack and Luke. And then Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, those are the guys that really stand out. Timo Meyer as well. But then they kind of brought in some veteran experience this past season, or leading into last year. So guys like Stefan Nason, who have been a part of the program before. Brett Pesce, who spent his entire career in Carolina, a big veteran, 9 years there, I think. Bolstering up the back end, and Brendan Dillon, if I didn't already mention him as well. So I think they kind of found that good balance of that veteran, older experience with the young talent that everybody loves to watch. And so the first half of the season was really fun. They looked sharp. They were able to rebound quickly. Had a winning record going into that Christmas break. And then the second half of the season was, of course, much more of a struggle. Kind of couldn't get themselves out of the ruts that they were finding themselves in. Jack Hughes hurt his shoulder again, needed surgery. And then getting into the playoffs, the back end was just a mess, down 4 or 5 defensemen playing Carolina in the first round. So it was a tough way to end the season, but I think there was glimpses of hope for what's to come coming into this next year. And of course, there's a lot of fun in the mix as well. I think for me personally, Nico Heischer's first career hat trick was something that was really cool to be a part of. I interviewed him out on the ice after that, and the fans were chanting his name because he's been there his whole career as well. And of course, the captain of the team. So I think that was my first moment in the job. I think it was end of November where I finally could step back and be like, wow, this job is really cool. Because I had been so worked up about the work side of it, right? Making sure I'm in the right place, I'm saying the right things, what's coming up next. I think I was finally living in the moment for that one. And that was a really cool thing to be a part of. And a lot of big wins, beat the Rangers at home, didn't give up a single game. That rivalry is super, super fun to be a part of because it gets pretty wild. It gets pretty nasty, but in a good way, I think, for being somebody that's so new to the rivalry. And there's a lot of other great things as well. But yeah, those young guys on the team, really fun to watch. That's for sure.
So let's go just a sneak peek. I looked at the Devils schedule for next year. I just got done dissecting the Wilds yesterday. I noticed a couple of things. You guys open up on the road at Carolina on October the 9th. And then really cool that your home opener is a week later on the 16th against the two-time Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And an early date with your hometown Minnesota Wild on October 22nd, which, by the way, we should celebrate that night, at least in the mess hall at the Prudential, because that is the eve of your birthday, which lies on October 23rd. So a busy month of October for you, Miss Herzog.
I know. I tend to have really bad luck on my birthdays, so I'm really hoping we snap that streak this season. That would be that would be preferred. So we definitely should do that when you come out here.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll celebrate your birthday. We'll have a good chat, and obviously, I'm certain, being a Minnesota girl, I know you look forward to when you're coming to Minnesota. And I'm not going to tell you the schedule maker did you any favors, because I've talked to other NHL traveling broadcasters about the dreaded January back-to-back at Winnipeg, at Minnesota. And that's exactly what the Devils get. So they'll have to bundle up. You're used to it. But the only bummer is I think you play an afternoon game the day before you actually play the Wild. So I think you'll get a little quality time with your family, but not that full day.
Right. Yeah. It's 1:00 Central Time game, I believe. So hopefully getting into town, I would hope by like 8:00.
Yeah, it's a quick flight.
Yeah,
for sure.
But with the customs and everything, hoping to see them a little bit more than I did this past year. I saw them for like an hour before the game. So it's always that back-to-back with Winnipeg, the Winnie Mini back-to-back series.
Yeah, we with Minnesota hosting the World Juniors, for all of us on the broadcast side with the Wild, we knew we'd likely have home games leading into the holiday break. And then we also knew that as soon as we came back from the holiday break, we were going to get bombarded, which we did, and that's fine. It's a 2-week, 7-game trip that starts in Winnipeg and ends in Seattle, and we spend a lot of it on the West Coast. And, bittersweet, because it's a really cool trip in the heart of winter to places like LA, San Jose, and Anaheim. But we're going to miss being able to attend the World Juniors. And, for Minnesota to have that, it's going to be really cool. I would love to attend, but I'm happy to be on the road with the hockey team. When you find yourself traveling around, and I know you grew up a fan of the Minnesota Wild, is it nice that you're working in the Eastern Conference? So if you're quote unquote rooting for the Wild a little bit, it doesn't really hamper any of the Devils or people that work around the organization. I mean, if we were division rivals, if you were working in Chicago or Dallas, God forbid the Stars, it might be a different flavor. But you can get away with it being in New Jersey, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember in the playoffs too. Once the Devils lost in the first round, I was out on social media like, all right, who's hopping on the Minnesota bandwagon with me? Because that's where we're going now. cheering them on. And fans talk to me at the arena about the Wild, and they kind of keep in touch with them now that they know that I'm a Minnesota born and raised hockey fan. So it's fun to see fans kind of connect those dots and wanting to have that be a talking point throughout the season as well. So, yep, I'm not shy about my fandom with Minnesota, as long as, I'm not showing that too much when we're playing against you guys.
I get that. I do get that. You might not know the answer to this question because you've only been there for a year, but I am really impressed with the fan base in New Jersey because, having done this for 19 years, there's been plenty of years when we've gone in there when the Devils have been really good like they are right now, but there's also been years where the Devils were down. And one constant I can tell you, Rachel, is that building is, number one, it's always full, and it's always really a fun atmosphere, loud atmosphere in that rink. And that never changed through these 2 decades. Those fans are always there. Why do you think New Jersey has such a rabid fan base?
Well, I think, for one, I think it's just a passionate area of the country. You got that with the Rangers too, and the Islanders. They also have very, very passionate fans. But I also think specifically for New Jersey, it's the only pro team that they have. Despite the Jets and the Giants playing in New Jersey, they're still the New York Giants and the New York Jets. And then they lost the Sixers and everything. So it's the only team that they get to call their own. And I think that's why they are so passionate about this team. And yeah, like you said, the arena is crazy loud and the fans are so great. Yeah, they can get hard on the team when they feel like it's necessary, but all in all, they'll never miss out on a game. And I think that's what's ultimately important.
That's great stuff. All right, we're going to get to the fun part of the show here at the end. We call it the Hat Trick Hot Seat. 3 questions, Rachel. There are no wrong answers. We just give our listeners a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit, kind of away from the rink a little bit. Part of it revolves around the rink. So here we go. We're going to start with a real easy one. Your favorite either Broadway show or movie, and then once you pick it, then I'll ask you some questions about either the show or the movie. Which do you prefer, and what is your all-time favorite?
Okay, so I just went to my first Broadway show, and I saw Six. So that's the only one I can speak to. So I don't think it would be fair for me to say yes. So movie, I'm going to be basic because it actually is true. Miracle, I've probably seen 100,000 times and know every single line. But I also really like the Taken movies, if you've seen those, with Liam Neeson. Yeah. So those thriller excitement movies, those are typically my go-to.
Well, and Miracle is a no-brainer for anybody with a hockey background. And I mean it, like it's a legitimately terrific movie. Take aside the incredible story. Like, it's well put together, well done. Hard to do a sports movie without having some of the real broadcast in there, which they do with Al Michaels. And obviously it's the greatest sporting event for all of us of a certain age that you'd ever hope to see. Now, to the Taken side of things, that specific set of skills, the way they build that up, and I'm sure, the father-daughter thing, which you've talked about already, having that great relationship with your dad, that hits home. I also am a movieaholic, so I love seeing different types of movies. In fact, we're recording this on a Thursday. I'm up north in the Brainerd Lakes area, and I found a new theater in Pequot Lakes. I'm going to sneak to see the reboot of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which borders on a movie. I don't see scary movies. Like I very rarely will go that far, but this one to me is kind of fun. And they're bringing back some of the actors from the original,
that's always Jennifer the best.
Love Hewitt. So I think it's going to be really fun. So yeah, the movie, and trust me, with the Broadway shows, like Six is incredible. I saw that in St. Paul about 5 or 6 years ago. I was blown away. But I go to a Broadway show every time we play the Rangers. The night before we play in the Garden, I always end up going to a Broadway show. And there are some incredible shows. You can't really go wrong because it's such a high level. But Moulin Rouge is one I've seen in the last couple of years. If you can get to that one, it is so cool how they weave an old-time story with modernized music. And I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, I definitely plan on going to plenty more shows because that one was so much fun. And it's so cool to just see that talent right in your face. So definitely going to more Broadway shows, that's for sure.
You just finished your first year traveling throughout the National Hockey League. I'm not going to let you say Minnesota because it'd be too easy with family and friends.
Fair.
Your next favorite road city that you traveled to last year in the National Hockey League would be which one?
Okay, so I'm going to go arena and city because I really liked Nashville. I had always wanted to go to Nashville, so I liked that city, and we were able to stay overnight, so we really got to go see the town later after the game. And then favorite arena, I really liked the Bell Center in Montreal. I don't think that one can be beat. It's so iconic, and the fans are so loud in that building.
Incredible, right?
Incredibly loud. Like the team is crossing the blue line, and it's like they just scored. Like it's that loud all the time. So that was a really cool experience to go there. So I would say Nashville and Montreal. Yeah. And that's a cool city too.
It is. And they have the Toasty Dogs in the mess hall. And the Toasty Dogs in Montreal are undefeated. So I have to agree with you. We got treated to Marc-Andre Fleury and that whole thing last year where he pitched the shutout. And Rachel, I've never seen this. They had to stop the game for almost 8 minutes because that crowd, and you know what I'm talking about, Montreal is a very hockey-centric crowd. It takes something to get them out of their chair. And they had that much love and appreciation for their hometown guy, even though he never played for the Canadians, that the game stopped for 8 minutes. I don't cry.
I remember seeing all that.
I cried that night. And it was a really cool moment. So Montreal is a wonderful pick. You'll never go wrong at the Bell Center. Final question, and this is going to make me feel super old, but I ask almost every one of my guests this question. I can't wait to hear yours because I'm pretty certain I probably have not seen the same show. Your first concert, I want to know the first concert you went to. I want to know who you went to see, and I want to know the venue, where it was, if you can look back at that whole story.
I don't think that this is going to be too dramatic. It was Luke Bryan and Jason Aldean at the XL Energy Center.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those are good guys.
Great guys.
I wasn't a huge concert goer until I think my first one was 8th grade.
Yep.
And then I went to a couple at the state fair, saw Toby Keith and Carrie Underwood. If you guys can see a theme, I'm a country music gal. And then, worked a lot of concerts as well.
Have you seen Kenny?
Yes, 3 times.
We just went out to the Sphere in Vegas and saw him. And, he puts on such a great show. He's one of those performers that plays to the crowd. He's got the energy, runs around the stage.
100%.
I've probably seen him 15 times. And, I like all kinds of music. Country music certainly is up there. Did you ever see Taylor Swift?
No, I never was a huge Swiftie. So I know if any of you are listening, don't come after me. I don't have anything against her music. I just never got into it. I know one of my younger sisters is, and my older sister as well. I think Claire went to the Eras tour this past year. So she got to experience some history there with Taylor Swift. But no, I listen to her music here and there, but not a diehard fan by any means.
I'm with you. I was never a diehard fan. I respected the music. You hear it everywhere. My daughters 15 years ago were a lot younger. They're older now. They're in their 20s. But 15 years ago, they were obsessed. And so we took them to see Taylor Swift at the XL Energy Center. So this would have been somewhere around 2010, 2011. And I will tell you this, even though I went in kind of grudgingly to the whole thing, I was blown away. And, I grew up with Madonna. I grew up with Prince. I grew up with Journey. And she had that way of connecting with the crowd that you can't fake. It's authentic. It's real. You can feel it. And so I really respected that. Hadn't seen her since, but again, out of respect for that experience, I went to see the Eras Tour movie last year when we got to Toronto. And being the movie guy I am, it was a 3-hour production. It was awesome, but I didn't understand why the people in the theater, and I was by far the oldest person in there, Rachel, but they were like dancing and then they were like cheering at the end of these songs. I'm like, listen, that's a movie theater screen. She can't hear
I
you
know.
or see
They
you.
saw it more as like a sing-along and like trying to pretend they're at the concert. Yeah.
It was bizarre, but it was cool. Like, again, out of respect for that connection, and my daughters are Swifties. And so I kind of got dragged into that fight. But, it's funny because when you work in our business, especially during the hockey, summer's different, but during the hockey season, you got to pick and choose your battles because, you're on the go, as you know now. You're packing up, you're moving, your off nights on the weekend are few and far between. Your weekends are normally gone. So when you get the chance to do something fun, you got to do it, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And not to double back on your question, just because you reiterated that you're a big movie guy, I am a documentary girl.
Oh, yes.
So I know the options were Broadway or movies, but I watch documentaries every single day.
I think our listeners know that I use this platform along with my social media accounts to promote great shows, movies, concerts, whatever. And I'm way into documentaries, and I fell into one a couple nights ago. Very heavy subject as a father, very hard to watch. But Amazon Prime has a brand new documentary called One Night in Idaho. And
I just watched that one yesterday.
Okay, so I start watching, and I go to bed early because I'm an old guy. I start watching at 9 o'clock thinking I'll watch the first one or two of the 5, and I'll tuck in around 10 or 10:30. I stayed up till like 1 o'clock in the morning. I could not. I was mesmerized by the production level. And, they really, I've seen a lot of different shows that focus on the crime. This one really focused in on the families. And it was incredibly well done.
I agree. Yeah, there's a lot of really great reviews. It just came out like a week ago as well, since the plea deal went through or whatever. So, yeah, I watched that all in one sitting. When I say the 4.5 months off of work, I've been rifling documentaries. So, in the midst of trying to hang out with friends and stuff, but I definitely have way too much downtime on my hands.
Not for long, because when you see that schedule come out and you start looking at those preseason games, you're probably we're in the middle of July. By the time you get to August, it's just like, you know that they're starting to gather and right around the corner. Then we've got the September rush of training camp and then a couple of those exhibition games into the season. Well, Rachel, awesome conversation. We're going to do this again. So proud of you as a Minnesotan, just seeing your journey, and you're way ahead of the curve, as you mentioned, going from where you were at St. Cloud to where you were in North Dakota to now working full-time in the NHL. That does not happen easily. You have to have a ton of talent. You do. And it's been great kind of hearing your journey. So thanks for taking all this time today to share that with our listeners.
Yeah, I'm really glad I was able to carve out 45 minutes in the immense downtime that I have this summer. No, I really appreciate you having me on, and thank you for all the kind things you just said. And I will be back in Minnesota next week for a couple of weeks, so maybe we'll have to get together for lunch or something.
I would really appreciate that, and I know our listeners appreciated all the cool information we got today. We'll be following you throughout the season. In my next segment, I'll give you a couple ways where you can follow the great content that Rachel provides for the New Jersey Devils. And I'm back to put a bow on the show next here on Wooden Sticks. All right, we're back on the show. Final segment here. And before I forget, definitely give this young lady a follow. Great content, big fun. She's developed that chemistry with the players and coaches, which is so key in her role. It's at Rachel M. Herzog on X, and you won't regret it. And it's so fun to see a hometown talent jump in and do so well at such a young age. And so great on her for tackling that job last year, doing it at such a high level. And at Rachel M. Herzog is where you can follow all of her great work. Now, my Twitter account at Gorgomatic21, you can send some questions. You can certainly send some recommendations for guests that you might want to hear from. Could be a former NHL player, could be a former college player, could be a coach that intrigues you. I'd love to hear, and I do interact with a lot of our listeners on a regular basis on that platform. Or come out and see me at Canterbury Park. We're halfway through the season. I'm up north this week because we're on the rodeo break. We get back to our racing schedule next week on the 23rd. And come out and say hi in the paddock. I've had a couple listeners stop out, talk about the show, and kind of throw out some commentary with some people they'd like to hear from. If you're out at Canterbury, I'm super easy to find, and just come on out and say hello and mention that you listen to Wooden Sticks, and we'll go from there. But a lot to look forward to and a lot to be excited about. We finally have the schedule out. We know we've got Winter Olympics next year in Italy. That's going to be really cool. And, of course, we know that Minnesota will play host to the World Juniors. And there is nothing like the excitement level around the World Juniors. It's so unbelievable to see the high-end players at that tournament every year, because in a year or two, they're going to be the same high-end players that are rising stars in the league. And if you're a fan of the Minnesota Wild, look no further than players like Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, and now the latest star from the World Juniors, Steve Boyum, to come in. You just know they're going to be those type of players, and every country's got them. So when you go over to watch these games in Minneapolis or St. Paul next winter, you're going to get a real sneak peek at the young phenoms in the game that are going to be fixtures in the NHL for years to come. So check that out. That's all we've got today. We appreciate you listening. If you know anybody that wants to be a part of the show, again, ping me at Gorgomatic21. We'll get you in touch with everybody responsible, and we'll try to hype up whatever business we can here on Wooden Sticks. Thanks for checking us out. We'll see you next week.